Have you ever felt a chill in your own home? A cold spot in the bed next to you that has nothing to do with the temperature? That's how it began for me. It started with the scent of expensive cologne that wasn't mine, clinging to my wife Isabella's cashmere sweater one Tuesday night. She'd been late, a client dinner she'd called it, breezing into our Chicago brownstone on Astor Street with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I was standing in the kitchen, the steak I'd cooked for her growing cold on the counter. The lie was so loud it was almost a physical thing in the room. I saw her phone light up on the Marble Island, a name I didn't recognize, and in that instant a tiny crack formed in the foundation of my world. I knew with a certainty that terrified me that I was standing on the edge of a canyon, and one wrong step would send me plunging into the dark. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. For 10 years, Isabella was my everything. We built a life that was the envy of our friends, a successful architecture firm I'd poured my soul into. A beautiful home, a future that seemed as solid as the foundations I designed. I was the loyal, steady husband, the man who believed in anniversaries and quiet Sunday mornings. But the woman I married had vanished, replaced by a stranger who was cold, distant, and masterfully deceptive. The client dinners became more frequent. Her phone, once left carelessly on the coffee table, was now permanently attached to her hand, angled away from me with a practiced defensiveness. She'd sneer when I asked who was texting her so late. "It's just work, Mark," she'd say, her voice dripping with a new, sharp-edged annoyance. "You're being paranoid." She made me feel small, foolish, like my questions were an insult to her integrity. The villains, Isabella and her unseen accomplice, felt untouchable, wrapped in a bubble of arrogance, while I was the one left feeling humiliated in my own home. The slow discovery was a special kind of torture. It was a receipt for two, not one, from a booth at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse on a night she was supposedly working late. It was a hushed phone call in the guest room, her voice a low murmur I couldn't quite decipher, but the tone was intimate, conspiratorial. The real break came when I was looking for a misplaced file in the spare bedroom. Under the bed, pushed far against the wall, was a small black leather travel bag I'd never seen before. My heart hammered against my ribs. Inside was a curated collection for a secret life. Lingerie that was definitely not for me. A bottle of the same expensive cologne I'd smelled on her sweater, and a second burner phone. My hands were shaking as I turned it on. The screen glowed to life, revealing months of messages between her and a man named Julian. They were graphic, detailed, and full of contempt for me. "Mark is so predictable," one of her texts read. "He'll be waiting up with a sad little dinner while we re-at the peninsula." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank to the floor, the phone in my hand, the air sucked from my lungs. The man I was, the loyal, loving husband, broke right there on the dusty floorboards. In that moment of absolute devastation, something new was born. The grief curdled into a cold, hard resolve. The architect in me, the man who designs, plans, and builds, took over. I wasn't going to just leave. I was going to deconstruct her life, brick by brick. I put the bag back exactly where I found it. I became the perfect, oblivious husband. I smiled. I brought her coffee in the morning. I listened to her fabricated stories about work. And all the while, I was gathering proof. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop, who operated out of a small office in the Loop. He was expensive, but worth every penny. Got me everything. Photos of Isabella and Julian kissing in a parking garage off Michigan Avenue. Hotel check-in records from the Langham, even audio recordings of them laughing about my naivete. I took the burner phone and used a data recovery service to pull every deleted text and photo. I opened a new bank account and quietly began moving my personal assets. I met with the best divorce attorney in Chicago, a shark named Ms. Albright, and laid out the entire sordid affair. She listened, her expression unreadable, and when I was done, she simply said, "We will utterly ruin them. The trap was set." Isabella had been planning a girls' weekend in Miami for her birthday. The pie confirmed Julian had booked a matching flight. This was it. The day she left, I filed for divorce, citing infidelity and providing the mountain of evidence. I also filed a lawsuit against Julian for alienation of affection, a move Ms. Albright called beautifully vindictive. While they were sipping mojitos on South Beach, I was systematically dismantling their world. I had the locks on our home changed. I sent a carefully curated package of the most damning photos and texts to Julian's wife. Then, I called an emergency meeting with the board of the charity Isabella chaired, a position that gave her immense social standing. I presented them with a detailed dossier of her affair, including her use of charity funds to pay for some of her trips with Julian. They were horrified. By the time her plane touched down at O'Hare, she had already been voted off the board in disgrace. She arrived home to find her keys useless and a courier waiting with the divorce papers. The look on her face when she saw me through the window cold, impassive, was one of pure, unadulterated shock. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. Her phone began to explode with calls. From her parents, her friends, the now former members of her charity board, all of whom had received anonymous emails containing a link to a password-protected website. I had built a gallery of her betrayal. The public exposure was absolute. Julian was fired from his high-powered finance job after the scandal hit their company's HR department. His wife left him, taking their children and most of their assets. Isabella was a social pariah, her reputation destroyed, her bank accounts frozen by the divorce proceedings. She was left with nothing but the secret travel bag ID left for her on the front porch. The courtroom was the final act. She and Julian sat there, pale and broken, as Ms. Albright presented the evidence. They didn't even fight. The judge awarded me the house, the majority of our assets, and even made Isabella liable for my legal fees. I walked out of the Daily Center into the cold Chicago air, not with a sense of victory, but with a profound emptiness. The life I had built was gone, and I had been the one to tear it down. The revenge was complete, but the cost was my own heart. I sold the brownstone on Astor Street, unable to live with the ghosts. Sometimes late at night in my new sterile apartment overlooking the river, I wonder if she ever thinks about that cold steak on the counter, the last meal I ever made for the woman I thought I knew. The rain on the windowpane is the only sound in the quiet dark.